The Shute podcast.
Is that the point with the book? Is it right? I know you said something like when you write, it's therapeutic for you. Are you writing it for yourself? Are you writing to sell the books? Or is it part of the book is to maybe bring awareness to some of the issues that you talk about? And I don't want to give it away because there's some stuff that's like a twist at the end. But like one of the issues you bring up is ransom and kidnappings that you say in the book that's on the rise. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah. When I did my research for it several years back, I was reading a lot of stats, especially overseas, where kidnapping, it's something that you don't hear much of in the U.S. media. But you also have to remember the filter that everything's put through in the U.S. media. I mean, and it's not political. It sounds like it is, but I don't care if you put on Fox News or MSNBC, or you kind of end up hearing all the same stories. The spins on them are put a little different, but you don't hear a lot of what's really occurring in the world. So if your news sources are outside the United States, you start reading stuff and go, man, kidnapping, for money is how plenty of organizations survive. And they're not out there. In my book, they're asking for 20 million euros, asking for a lot of money. They're doing that because this guy can afford it. So they can hit him up for a lot of money. And if he loves his daughter enough and they scare him enough, he'll pay it. In other parts of the world where the kidnapping it's not like it's happening to every other person you know. And, they're kidnapping, they're asking for much smaller amounts of money because the people will pay it and make the problem go away, get the person back. But yeah, it's not something we necessarily have to deal with here in the United States, but other countries, yeah, for sure. It probably ebbs and flows based on if they can. It's kind of like the drug industry. That if they legalize marijuana in the United States, okay, let's move on to another drug. Let's move on to something else that's going to make us a lot of money, basically. So bad people pivot very quickly to continue to make money and thrive. But yeah, for the books, I definitely like to have a message out there. I definitely write not so much therapy, but there's lots of stories that have been in my head for years. And so that to have the outlet now to be able to actually get them published and get the positive feedback from readers definitely has been very rewarding. Money wise, yes, it's not a charity. Although if you were to tell me any book I write is gonna just break even, you're not gonna make any money, are you gonna stop writing? I would say no, I don't do it for the money. I sure would enjoy to have it be my full-time occupation. I'd love to be able to afford my island out in, Indonesia. Money is one of those things where it's necessary. And I like comfort. I like going to concerts. I like traveling. I flew down to Florida 2 weekends ago to go see Shinedown. I like that I had the ability to just catch a flight Saturday morning, found a cheap discount airline flight down there, got a hotel, got a rental car, and I flew back Sunday. To be able to do that, I have to be able to afford that. But it's not my central focus in life. It's more the experiences, the people that I surround myself with. If I can sell books or do well in my job, my 9-to-5 job, and that affords me that ability to travel or to go to the concerts or go out to a nice restaurant, then definitely much more enjoyable than sitting home poor, eating ramen noodles, watching television.
Well, and so do you think that you could potentially get either this book or some of the other ones into a movie or TV adaptation? Is that the dream? Because is that how most authors really get the big money and kind of get set? I know Jack Carr, he's had a ton of books, but then the one they did, the Amazon series, I'm assuming he got paid a lot for that.
I'd say it's generally speaking the dream, but again, and Jack's a good example. I know Jack. I was able to, unfortunately, I met him before he took off. So
I was going to say, because he promoted one of your books. I saw him holding up your book and I was like,
yeah,
oh, that's awesome. Yeah, he did my show too. He's a super nice guy.
Super great guy. Yeah, he was actually kind to promote The Body Man when it came out. Yeah. He was kind enough to tweet out that the book was there. I had someone Wednesday morning message me and said, hey, I saw Jack Carr's post and I bought your book. And I'm like, I'd sent Jack a message and said, hey, you sold one copy for me.
How do you know definitely before he took off?
Yeah, I was at a book conference up in New York City back in, I don't know, 2017 or 20, I think it was 2018. I hadn't read the Terminal List yet. The Terminal List had just come out maybe a month before the conference or thereabouts. And so he was known, but he wasn't the Jack Carr that's kind of known now. There was a happy hour kind of like after the conference panels and all that were over. It was just, there he was. I went up, introduced him. He actually knew who I was before I could get my name out. He knew me just from social media and we just started chatting. By the end of the weekend, we exchanged numbers and, and then as he took off, it was kind of cool to say, yeah, I know his real name. I've been able to interact with him and he's been super encouraging. What's interesting, and I won't tell his full story on it, but how he got his movie deal, which he's talked about in the podcast, and I've even had brief conversation with him about it, is like you're asking, is that the dream? For the most part, people love it. Most authors, though, that sell their book rights don't make much money. That's not the way to go to Easy Street. Some do, and some make a lot. But it's not uncommon for it to be, hey, we'll buy your book rights and you get $5,000 either. Hollywood will flow the money, will turn the spigot on, but they also are good at, trying to get a deal too. And someone's willing to take a little bit amount of money because they need it. They'll gladly, stiff them out of $100,000 all day long. But for Jack, what happened was when he was in the military, one of the guys that was tied up in the SEALs or whatever with him was coming out. He met with Jack in his office because Jack was a commanding officer at the time. And, Jack basically said to the guy, what's your future? What are you planning to do? And he just gave him advice. I think he gave him some contacts of, hey, if you're interested in that, maybe you need to call this person. And then met with them and then pretty much didn't think about that conversation again. And then several years later, his book's coming out. This guy reaches out to him and says, hey, Jack, do you remember me? And he goes, oh, yeah, of course. And he goes, do you remember what you said to me when I left the military? And he's like, no clue. And so this guy recounted to Jack their conversation. And he said that conversation set me up for where I then started a career in, the movie industry. And, Jack's like, well, that's great. And the guy said, "Can I get a copy of your book? I'd like to give it to someone." And Jack's like, "Yeah, sure. Who do you want to give it to?" This guy had got in with Chris Pratt, and that connection, basically
Right.
paying it forward of helping this person and not helping them because you wanted something, helping them because it was the right thing to do, is what, because people like to say, well, Jack Carr got lucky. I don't believe in luck. I think Jack Carr and so many other people plant a seed. They do something and that seed grows. Now, some people plant seeds and nothing happens. Absolutely. But it was that contact of what happened
Yeah.
with that person eventually bloomed into him getting, a deal with, Chris Pratt. And Chris Pratt bought the rights. And then when Jack, and this is where Jack's unusual in many ways, not only did they buy the rights for his book, but him and, Chris established a good rapport. And Chris actually brought Jack on to be like writing scripts, be an executive producer. So he actually was able to keep his voice in the story, because that's the other thing common with Hollywood. They buy The Body Man or they buy Ransom Daughter. They can strip almost every portion of what Eric Bishop wrote out of that because they've bought the rights. That's why some authors, I don't know if you know who Brad Taylor is. He's another former military. He was Delta Force. He's not sold. Last I'd talked to him or heard, he's not sold the rights to his Pike Logan character because he knows unless he gets creative control, which is extremely rare, they can do anything they want with his character. And for the limited amount of money they're going to pay him, he wants to have that control of what Pike is. And so Jack's been fortunate where he's been able to maintain a lot of that.
Hollywood is definitely ruining a lot of things right now with their just weird agenda. I don't know. I find it just some of the stuff they're putting out is just complete garbage, especially with all the remakes, and it's just bizarre. So yeah, I would definitely want some kind of control, unless it was a studio that I trusted, that I looked at some of their other work and said, yes, you guys have done a good job. Right. But yeah, if you just finally sold your creative hard work and all that process to somebody and then they just butcher it, oh, that would be. I know Stephen King was mad. Some of his stuff, he was not happy with what they did to it. And I think one of the movies like he directed, which is really weird to think about. But yeah, I mean, it's a weird game.